Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Social Audio Think Tank. Josh here from Australia. I'm here with Jackson. How you going, Jackson?
I'm going great, thanks, Josh.
Awesome. And today we're doing the Batch-isode. You're wondering what is the Batch-isode? And I'm sure Jackson was when I proposed the idea for the episode to him. The Batch-isode is maybe some tips and some don't-dos for batch recording podcasts, which, if you haven't worked out, I'm sure the regular listeners would know, but if you're new to the show, that is what Jackson and I do generally, particularly now that we don't live in the same place. When we were in Melbourne, we would get together and do one or two at a time because we only have one topic, short episodes, and they're not normally based on news sort of stuff. So we found it easier just to get in the flow and record as many as we could before we ran out of energy, and then they would all be consistent with, or as consistent as we could get with things like sound and energy level and tone of voice and vibe and all those kinds of things. We've also fucked up some stuff, if I could put it that way, by doing batch episode recordings, by maybe not paying attention to things like chronology and keeping things consistent when you're mentioning things like other episodes or continuously talking about a sound problem that you might be having. All those things seem funny to people when you've spread out something you recorded in an hour over 4 or 5 weeks of releases. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Maybe more so the things that, in retrospect, kind of give away the game a little bit when you batch record, and maybe things you can leave out of your show to make it seem more consistent. And so you're not having things come up that actually make the show sound more dated maybe than it is. So does that make sense, Jackson, where I'm going there, that there's things to avoid when batch recording? So can you think of any off the top of your head before I get on my little diatribe? So,
just avoiding news or anything topical is probably a good idea. And avoiding, if you record 2 episodes, then don't in the second one say in the previous episode and then release them the wrong way round. That's probably a bit
which
of
is
a
what
no-brainer.
We've done.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I was going to bring up. Is one of the main things we've done is mentioned when things happened in time and then actually release the shows in a different order. And that kind of sounds funny when you listen to shows back to back. Sorry, I cut you off. Was there something else you wanted to add to that point?
No, that was pretty much what I was thinking. It's just, it's sort of really obvious, but it's the easiest one to get wrong as well.
And just to maybe put an even finer nail on that one, I think that it's something that I know I tend to do it towards the end of an episode where maybe I'm starting to feel more comfortable and less like, hey, I'm recording something that's going to be out there forever. And I feel more like, particularly with Social Audio Think Tank, because I do this with a co-host every episode, being Jackson, obviously, it becomes so comfortable that I forget what we're doing and I forget about the chronology of things and making things consistent for the show going forward, because it's no longer for me and you. Once it's out there, I guess it's for everybody who's listening to it. Little things that it happens towards the end of an episode is what I'm basically getting to when I start to relax and I really get in the flow. At the time, saying something like, oh, in the previous episode we mentioned this and this, or I know in a recent episode we might have said something like, I'm going to go listen to more episodes of Serial, but I'd actually already finished Serial at that time, whereas when we spoke about it in like real time, I was actually up to the second episode at that point. But as I was releasing them, I'd actually already finished the show. So I know it sounds silly, but it's almost like I was fibbing a little bit because I'd actually already done the thing that I was talking about, I was about to do. And I know that sounds really funny, but I know as a podcast listener that I pick up on those sorts of things where someone's making a concerted effort to batch everything into one recording session, and then maybe more and more so towards the end of their episodes, they're saying things that contradict what's actually happening with the flow of the show. And it seems like finicky stuff. And there's a couple of other podcasts about podcasting out there where I actually don't like them very much because the hosts are so pedantic about stuff that doesn't fucking matter at all. But I think this falls under you should do the right thing by your audience, and at least if you're going to say things in your show when you're batch recording them, actually try to stick to that. Because I was listening back to our episodes to make sure that they worked, and it was pissing me off that I'd left in these silly little things. But they were kind of, in the middle of a sentence. So I couldn't just hack off or edit out that certain portion, because then I would maybe need to, it might be attached to the same few words where we mention our Twitter handles or something like that, or say thank you to the listeners. So I can't just hack it out. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that particular thing about mentioning other episodes before I throw out a few other tips and a few other things not to do?
Well, I guess it sort of depends on the content of your show, because I'd say for something like what we're doing, where there's maybe some sort of educational content. I hesitated to say educational, like someone might completely disagree with that and think that we're talking shit. But I would say if we've got some kind of educational content, then we've got potential for a really long tail audience. Like, people can come back to listen to this in 3 months and enjoy it in the same way as if they'd listened the day that we released it. So referring to other episodes in that case, probably not so bad, because it doesn't really matter. It's not like there's a plot and you've got to go episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. You can listen to them in any order and probably get the same enjoyment and content out of it. So referring to other episodes and getting it wrong probably isn't as bad for us. If there was a more serialized format and you were referring to previous episodes and building on what you'd stated in previous episodes, then yeah, it would be more of a problem.
That's basically exactly what I wanted to say in my massively, stupidly long-winded way. And you just nailed it. Essentially, if you say something, particularly towards the end of an episode when you're maybe more relaxed and you're not concentrating as much because the flow is really happening, if you say something like, oh, if you missed when we talked about such and such, go back to the last episode, because when you're actually batch recording them on that particular day and that time, that's the order you recorded them in, but you didn't actually release them in that order. You might actually be wasting your listeners' time, because they're going to go searching for something that you never actually spoke about because you haven't even released that episode yet. Or maybe it turned out really bad and you decided not to release it. They're the sorts of things that annoy me. Yeah. And just to give you an example, I know that we're going on and on about that point, and maybe that's all we get to talk about today. Maybe we just stick with this don't mention other episodes thing when you're batch recording. There will be times when you'll talk about something that happened in another episode, particularly when it's crucial to what you're already talking about, where if just say Jackson and I are talking about microphones and we go a little bit on about microphones, but then Jackson or I say, if you really want to know more about that particular microphone, we talk about it a lot in the second last episode, because on the day it was 2 episodes before that we talked about microphones in depth. If people then go out and they're looking for that content and it's not there yet because you haven't actually released it yet, you're basically talking about things in the wrong tense. You're talking about past tense when it hasn't actually even happened yet for the actual listener, which is kind of like future tense. So they're going to be scrubbing through your back catalogue, finding nothing. And then when that episode does actually turn up, are they really going to want to listen to it? Maybe, if it's really detailed information that you're giving. But if it's a serialized or plot-driven thing that you're doing, they might have already just thought, oh, well, you've wasted my time. I'm jumping ship. See you later.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else off the top of your head you wanted to say about that, Jackson, but we might just leave it at that today. So
yeah, I think so.
This will still be called Batchisode, but maybe we'll do a little mini-series every so often. I'll throw in a new Batchisode episode, if that's cool with everyone. So at joshuacliston on Twitter for me.
And at GXJackson on Twitter for me.
Excellent, excellent. And I guess this is our first episode for 2015.
Yeah.
Did you get that, Jackson, where I was going with that? Hopefully the listener will pick that up, and this will actually be the first episode of 2015 when I release it. So
let's hope so.
I just thought I'd throw it out there, but my normal monotone voice didn't really suit that kind of joke very well at all.
It took me a moment.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, cool. We're not the smartest cookies, man. Yeah, so I think the audience would have worked that out by now. They probably think, geez, just give us the goods and quit trying to be funny, boys. Cool, mate. Well, it's good to talk to you, and welcome to 2015, everyone. I think it's going to be an awesome year for podcasting. And once again, if you didn't catch any of our episodes at the end of last year, I did mention we will hopefully be answering more technical questions, because we were trying to avoid doing that, but it seems like we're but well, particularly me at the moment. I don't know about Jackson. He probably always gets them being an audio engineer, but more recently I've been receiving a lot of technical questions. So if you do have them, at Joshua C. Liston on Twitter for me, and Joshua C. Liston at Gmail if you want to email the question through, and at GX Jackson on Twitter for Jackson, and you'll get through to him. And we'll try and answer it on the show, and we'll let you know when we do approach that question. So anyway, I'll see you later, Jackson, and see you later to the listener. You're not going to say goodbye there, mate? Or?
That was a pretty good ending. I thought I'd just leave it there. It was all right.
That's all right. Sweet, no worries.